we are ready to go. My name is Jeremy, and for the next half hour or so, I'm going to be your tour guide and driver as we check out all sorts of cool African animals. But before we get to the fun stuff, I just got to go over a few quick safety procedures. If you have a medical emergency during the tour, and you need to grab my attention, you can do so by touching the yellow emergency strips above you to the left or right, or if you're in the trailer right behind us, just get my attention through that little window. Also, if you drop anything overboard during the tour, just let me know afterwards and we'll be happy to send someone out to go grab it for you. And finally, please no standing while the tram is in motion, but when I do come to a complete stop, feel free to stand up to take pictures or get a better view if you'd like. Just make sure to sit back down once I get rolling again. With all that said, we're almost ready to get started. When I first came here to the safari park, I got interested in all the different ways these animals' coats can help them survive. So that's sort of the theme of today's tour. And coming up on the right, we have a great example of this. We've got two cheetah brothers resting in the shade of those trees to the right. You might have to look closely in between the trees. I'll definitely make sure to creep by so hopefully everyone can get a chance to check them out. Now those spots all over the cheetah's coat are pretty important for their survival because it helps break up that outline of their body and allows them to sort of camouflage themselves amongst shadows or tall grass in their environment. And this allows those cheetahs to get a head start when they go to chase down their prey, because they really need that head start if they're going to be successful a lot of the time. So anytime you see stripes or spots or patterns like that on an animal's coat, very often the goal is to help camouflage them. But this is just one of many ways these animals' coats can help them survive out in the wild. Now coming up on the right, we've got some greater flamingos down below us. And these greater flamingos, of course, don't have a coat of fur, but feathers all over their body can be adjusted for their survival. Unfortunately, I can't come to a complete stop here. A little sensitive during their nesting period, but you might be able to spot some of their small gray babies running around if you look closely. I was mentioning their feathers are important for their survival. They actually get their pink color from the food that they eat. So these flamingos will eat red algae. And the red pigments in that algae give their feathers that signature pink shade. And this pink color can be pretty important for their survival. It stimulates reproduction. So, for example, if I were a flamingo searching for a mate, I would want to find an individual with pink feathers, because that tells me that that individual is really good at finding food for themselves out in the wild and keeping themselves taken care of. That pink color is sort of a way that those flamingos can show off their survival abilities to each other, and in turn show off how good of a mate they would make.
And let you know that unfortunately I might not be able to see you this weekend.
Coming up in front of us on the right, we're going to be passing by the Rhino Rescue Center, and it looks like a couple of our southern white rhino females are actually out and about here up ahead on the right.
So that way they'll help us.
I may have to stop a little further back because I don't want to get too low, but feel free to stand up to check out some of those rhinos up ahead of us on the right. I will be moving forward in a little bit as well.
See the rhino?
Now, rhinos don't have a coat of fur, as you may have noticed, because they're very large animals living in a very hot part of the world, so that lack of a coat of fur can help them stay a little bit cooler. This also leaves their skin exposed to the sun. You guys might be able to see the rhinos better from up here if you stand up. Sort of awkward with the downhill here. But anyway, as I was saying, that lack of a coat of fur can help them stay cool, but it also leaves their skin exposed to the sun. And believe it or not, those rhinos can actually get sunburned. What do you do when you're worried about being sunburned? You put on some sunscreen, and that's kind of like what those rhinos will do. On a hot, sunny day like today, you'll often see them roll around in the mud. And they get that mud all over themselves, which not only helps cool them off, but it acts as a protective layer against the sun, a lot like sunscreen. And that actually reminds me, now that I mentioned this, I realized I forgot to put on my own sunscreen today, so after the tour, you might just see me rolling around in the mud as well. important to protect your skin from the sun, everybody. Now over on the left, we've got our South Pond area, which is a nice cool place to relax, especially on warmer days like today. You might see some large whitebirds out there, either swimming around in the water or on that island if you look closely. Those are different types of pelicans. We've also got a local animal here to the left, a local mule deer. Kind of caught me by surprise, but I like to point out those local animals because they like to spend their time around here. We actually set aside about 800 acres of our land here at the safari park just for the local habitat type, which is called coastal sage scrub. So sometimes we get animals like those mule deer that like to hang out around the tram path because it's a nice, safe, protected area for them to raise their families, and there's plenty of food and water to go around. Now, as we continue along, you can see further out across our South African habitat, which is this area to our left. You can see some animals out there in the distance if you look closely. Well, that's just a little teaser of some of the things we're going to get to see. Over the next few minutes, we're going to be moving up alongside of this South African habitat and hopefully get a closer look at some of those animals and maybe even learn a couple things about how their coats can help them survive in the wild. Now if you look up ahead of us to the right, as soon as we pass by this rock wall, there's actually some Grevy's zebras up there on the tops of those hills up ahead of us to the right. So once again, I'll creep by. Hopefully everyone can check them out up there because zebras are one of those really iconic African animals with those black and white stripes all over their body. I mentioned that stripes are often used for camouflage. Well, zebra stripes aren't going to be as good for camouflage because black and white colors right next to each other are meant to stand out. They're gonna pop a little bit. The zebras aren't going to blend in as easily, but that's okay because their stripes are to help them recognize one another, tell each other apart in their group. So it's important for the stripes to be nice and noticeable. Alright, so now that we've crossed over through that gate, we've entered sort of the main drag of our South African habitat. And looks like we're going to get to check out some animals coming up on the left, a little further up the hill there. You can see some sort of chestnut-colored animals on that hillside there to the left, all sitting on the ground. Those are called South African sable antelope. And those sable antelope live on the forest edge, which is a very green environment. But believe it or not, those chestnut coats of theirs are pretty good camouflage in a green environment like this, because many predators have limited color vision. They can't see all of the same colors that we can, and so to them, those sable antelope are going to blend right into their environment because green, orange, and reddish colors are going to look very, very similar. Now if you look beyond those sable antelope, we have some brown shaggy antelope further up the hill, which are called Ellipsin waterbuck, and it looks like a couple of them were butting horns up there, having a little bit of a disagreement. You might get to check out those Ellipsin waterbuck a little bit closer up from the other side of the loop there, but it's cool to point them out when they're in action like that, butting horns. Now when you see antelope butting horns like that, they're not trying to seriously hurt each other, seriously injure each other. It's just a little competition to see who's the bigger, stronger individual. It's kind of like arm wrestling. You're not trying to seriously injure your opponent, but you do want to prove that you are the stronger individual. Coming up on the left, we're going to get our first look at some giraffes on the tour. It looks like two of these giraffes here right next to us on the left are trying to stay a little bit cooler, resting in the shade here. Now those spots all over the giraffe's coat are sort of like those cheetah spots we saw at the beginning of the tour. Those spots help break up the giraffe's outline so they can camouflage themselves. Specifically, giraffe spots are pretty good at camouflaging into the shadows underneath trees. You can sort of see how their spots resemble those patterns of the light filtering through those leaves. So despite their large size, under the right conditions, it can actually be pretty tricky to pick those giraffes out from their surroundings, especially because they do a lot of eating. They're very large-bodied animals. They need a lot of energy to power their bodies. So you're going to find those giraffes eating almost all the time. It's one of their favorite pastimes out here. Now, I mentioned those giraffes are sitting in the shade, trying to stay nice and cool.
He's over here.
We're coming up on the left. We have a little bit of construction, and we're actually building a nice little shelter for some of our giraffes, tall enough for them to fit inside large, long necks. So hopefully we'll have a way to get out of the sun or even out of the rain, which I'm sure they'll appreciate, especially as it gets further into summer here and it's going to start warming up. You can see we've got a little giraffe shelter being built up there. It's going to be quite tall, and we're very excited. I'm sure the giraffes are excited as well. Now on the left side, we've also got some large tan antelope walking around, which are called Patterson's eland. Really pretty looking animals. And also in the shade to the left, we've got another antelope species, a little bit smaller and with a lavender colored coat. Those are called gemsbok. And those gemsbok are pretty cool looking with those black and white patterns on their faces. Those black and white patterns are called threat masks, which they use to help them compete with each other. You might even see a couple of the baby gemsbok over there to the left with a much lighter tan coat color. Those babies are born with that tan coat to help them blend in during that very vulnerable stage in their life. But then as they grow older and learn how to fend for themselves, they'll get that more lavender coat color. I also see a lot of you have noticed the Somali wild ass on the right there. We get a great view of that baby. Not 100% sure how old it is, but it's going to be more than a few weeks old at this point. Very, very cute, very cool looking animals. I'm always excited when I get to show them off this up close, because usually they're a little bit further up the hill. Now those Somali wild ass use those stripes around their legs, very much like zebra stripes. Those stripes help them recognize each other within their group. So you can sort of see as we get further into the tour here, there are a lot of patterns emerging in the ways that these animals' coats can help them survive. Anytime you see black or white colors, like those zebra or Somali wild ass stripes or the threat masks of the gemsbok, they want those colors to stand out because it's an important signal that they're trying to show off. We'll see what other patterns we can pick up on throughout the rest of the tour. Now, as soon as we start making our way up this hill, down below us on the left, you can see another rhino inside of this little walled off area. His name is Eric, and Eric is a black rhino, so he's a little bit different than the southern white rhinos we saw earlier. Black rhinos are a bit more territorial, so they tend to prefer to be alone, whereas those southern white rhinos we checked out at the beginning of the tour like to hang out in small groups. So that's one of the major differences. Black rhinos are also a little bit smaller as well. Now also coming up on the left here, we just crossed over into our Central African habitat. So our first Central African animals we get to check out are those orange Uganda kob on the left. And those Uganda kob use those orange coats of theirs to help them blend into their green environment. Very, very similar to the sable antelope we saw at the beginning of the tour. Now what's cool about the Uganda kob is their coats will actually sort of change shades of orange throughout the year to help them stay nice and blended in all year round as their environment changes with the seasons. Now also coming up on the left, a little further out there on that hilltop, you might see some roan antelope. And that hilltop there is one of their favorite spots to hang out because it's a great lookout spot. They can see very far in all directions around them and make sure no predators are trying to sneak up on them.
She's got a certain amount of energy throughout the entire week.
Now I've tried to tell those roan antelope before, hey guys, you can relax a little bit. There's no predators in here that can get you. You know, chill out. But for some reason, those roan antelope never seem to understand me. I guess maybe they're just enjoying the view from up there. Because as you'll see, once we get up on this bridge, it's a pretty nice view down the left-hand side. You can see the entire valley of our Central and South African habitats in the distance there. And I always think it's cool to see these areas from a distance and take it all in, see all of these different types of animals together in the same area like they would be in the wild. It sort of gives you a sense of what it would be like to see them in their natural habitat. But over on the right, we've got our African forest habitat.
Look at the animals. Look. You can see things.
It's a little tricky to see animals, but in between some of the trees there, you might see some red, sort of reddish colored antelope sitting on the ground up there on that hill. Now they have red in their name because of that reddish colored coat of theirs, and you guessed it, they're using it to help them blend into their green forest environment, very similar to the Uganda cob and the sable antelope we saw earlier. So actually a lot of animals in the forest habitat there are going to have a reddish colored coat because it's sort of a tried and true camouflage method for anyone living in a green environment like that. Now that we've continued along, we get a better view of those roan antelope on the left. And from this distance you can see that they've also got those black and white threat masks on their faces, very similar to the gemsbok, that help them compete with each other. Now as we pass these roan antelope by, try and catch a glimpse of their tails. Their tails are very noticeable. They stand out because they're black against a white background. It's because they want those tails to stand out because they use them as a signaling tool. For example, if they see a predator approaching their group, they'll flick their tail in the direction of that predator and let each other know of the danger. This also lets the predator know that they've been spotted, perhaps encourages that predator to go find an easier meal somewhere else. Predators are actually going to have a really low success rate in capturing that prey if the prey already knows that they're there all the time. So those tails can be very important tools, and they want to make sure they're nice and noticeable. And also, right below us to the left, we're going to get a great view of a couple Ankole cattle, which are very hard to miss with those gigantic horns on the top of their head. The horns on the Ankole cattle's head are not quite natural, though. They were bred that way by people over many, many generations, because in some African cultures, it's sort of a status symbol, or a symbol of success to own cattle with large horns like that, kind of like a fancy car or a fancy house. It's a way for them to show off their wealth and success to all their friends and family. So those horns on the Ankole cattle's head are not going to be very practical to carry around all day long. They're pretty heavy, but they sure do look cool. And I guess that's the purpose that they were selected for. To give you a better idea of the size of those horns, they're about as wide as the benches you're currently sitting on. So about 4 of you could sit across the top of an Ankole cattle's horn. However, I wouldn't recommend actually trying to sit up there, trust me. It's not a very comfortable place to sit. Down below us on the left side of that fenced off area down there, you might see some small canned Barbary sheep walking around. That's sort of their home down there. They blend in pretty nicely to that environment. And I'm sure you can also see Dune the camel right down there, front and center, having a little dinner to himself. Now, Dune was one of our animal ambassadors, which means he was walked around the park to meet our guests all the time for many, many years. But now, after many years of hard work, Dune is retired. So he spends his days hanging out down there with the Barbary sheep, and I think he's having a great time. I think they've become pretty good friends. Now, I've talked quite a bit about camouflage so far on the tour because that is a very common strategy when it comes to these animals' coats. Coming up on the left, these big black animals resting on the ground are trying to do the opposite. Those are called Cape buffaloes, and those black coats of theirs are meant to stand out because it's sort of a warning sign to predators. It's sort of their way of telling predators, hey, you better not mess with us, or we will defend ourselves. And that's exactly what those Cape buffalo will do. They spend a lot of time in a group like that so they can work together and fight back against their predators. And as we round this corner, if you look over on the right side, you might see another mule deer right under that tree there. Very cute, very cute. So a lot of this area on the right, or off in the distance to the left on those hills, is some of that protected coastal sage scrub habitat I was mentioning towards the beginning of the tour. Because there's actually a lot of threatened and endangered animals right here in our own backyards. So we want to make sure we preserve them just as much as we preserve these cool animals from around the world. Now over on the left there, you can see those ellipsin waterbuck that we saw from far away down below on the other side of the loop. We saw them budding horns. Now we have a closer look of those ellipsin waterbuck. You can see they're named after those white ellipse marks on their backsides. Now those ellipsin waterbuck have interesting coats of fur. You can see they're a little bit shaggy as well as a little bit shiny in the sunlight. That's because those ellipsin waterbuck have a natural oil covering their coats of fur, and those shaggy, oily coats are going to work a little bit like water-resistant jackets for them, help them stay nice and dry as they move through the water quickly and efficiently. Oh, you can see a few of the babies there on the left.
No.
Trying to catch up with the rest of the group, it looks like. That little group there is the equivalent of the kids' table at a family meal. Looks like they're all hanging out over there. But anyway, as I was saying, those water-resistant coats are going to be a huge help to those ellipsin waterbuck because that's how they escape their predators. They run into the water. And their predators aren't going to be able to follow them very easily because their predators aren't going to have that water-resistant coat. Now it is important to remember that many of these animals are threatened or endangered, and we want to do our best to help preserve them, because our goal here at the safari park is to end extinction. If you want to support the fight to end extinction, consider giving your support to the San Diego Zoo Wildlife Conservancy, because you can be a hero for wildlife. But either way, by being here today, you're already helping out because the safari park is a non-profit organization, so all of our resources go right back into taking care of our animals as well as funding conservation programs around the world. Now, if you're looking for ways in your everyday life to help out with conservation, there are some little things you can do. I'll give you a few suggestions. If you want to fight against drought, try conserving some water, which you can do by taking shorter showers or perhaps turning off the faucet while you brush your teeth, or maybe if you're staying from out of town in a hotel, consider using your towels multiple days in a row rather than having the hotel replace those towels every day. Or maybe you want to fight against climate change by reducing your carbon footprint, which you can do by carpooling with a friend next time you go somewhere, or even using public transportation, or just turning off the lights when you leave a room. All of those can be great ways to help out in your everyday life, and it can really add up and make a difference. Now we're back in East Africa, where we began our journey on the right. As we make our way back towards the tram station, you can see there's another sort of giraffe shelter being built out here as well. It's a little bit further along. And the construction does veer away from the animal though, so it looks like on this side there's not too much animal action going on, but I do see some animals up ahead. It looks like there is a southern white rhino grabbing a bite to eat up ahead on the right, so if you didn't get to see them very well at the beginning of the tour, here's another chance. You can see they're a little bit bigger than the black rhinos we saw on the way up the hill. Now rhinos actually have pretty poor eyesight. They can only see about 25 feet in front of us, or in front of them. So from this distance, that rhino would not be able to see us, but they can definitely hear us. They use those ears on the top of their head, sort of like radar dishes. They're always swiveling around, checking out their surroundings, and making sure that they're going to be nice and safe. They have really good sense of hearing. You can see that rhino is a little bit covered in some of that dried mud as well to help it stay nice and safe from the sun. And we will get one last look at some giraffes as we round the corner here to head back towards the tram station. That covered truck out there is our caravan safari, which might be something to do if you want to get up close and personal with the animals. Maybe next time you're with us at the safari park, you might even get to feed a giraffe, which is a lot of fun. You get a really good sense of the size of those animals when you're right up next to them like that. Now it is time for us to head back home, so I hope you've all had a fun tour, and maybe you even learned a couple things about how these animal coats can help them survive out in the wild. Maybe as you make your way through the park the rest of your evening here, if you see a new animal, ask yourself why it has a certain color coat, or why it has a certain marking or pattern on its coat. For example, why do tigers have an orange coat with black stripes? Because now all of you have the knowledge and tools to answer those types of questions. But either way, I hope you had a great time. Once I come to a complete stop at the tram station, you may exit out your right-hand side. If you have any questions or comments after each tour, feel free to let me know towards the front of the tram. If not, I hope you have a great rest of your day here at the safari park. And thank you all for joining me on today's tour.
I mean,
Does it require me to do stuff?
I mean, it requires you to go to Oklahoma and then Coronado.
You're not okay about it?
Here's the stroller. I was about to say,
Alright, ready to go?